Hello and welcome to your quick current events, news, and stimulus update. So in the news today, TurboTax has issued a statement in regards to the $600 stimulus check and the millions affected by their late or lack of payments. We're going to check in on how the COVID-19 vaccines are doing. We're going to take a look at the $2,000 stimulus checks, and we have some small updates there. We're going to look at the Georgia runoffs and how they seem to be wrapping up. And then I'm going to send you off into the weekend with those juicy current events at the end of this video. So feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video to help me battle the YouTube algorithm if you so please. So jumping right in, Thursday I spoke about the Get My Payment portal and how some people were seeing that their second stimulus check was not able to be processed properly. They were getting the check number 2 error. This error didn't offer much information and was, of course, pretty frustrating to see if you had to wait all the way potentially until April or longer to get your payment. This was forcing people to have to claim their payment on their 2020 tax returns. So for many, I'm sure this caused a lot of anger and confusion. Luckily, that anger and confusion shouldn't last too long because since then, TurboTax has issued 2 statements, both in regards to the $600 checks and the timeline. The first statement says that those who were expecting checks will no longer have to file for taxes to receive them, and that you should expect payments anytime after yesterday, the 8th. I know a ton of people have already received them, and depending on what bank you use, it might just be a couple days later. Smaller banks have to wait a few more days typically, but hey, a couple days, that's a whole lot better than a few weeks or a few months potentially, especially if you didn't plan on filing taxes. TurboTax's second statement spoke to the reason why this happened. They claimed that the IRS made an error and sent money to accounts that were no longer active. Now, this does kind of make sense because I know certain tax prep companies will make temporary accounts for refunds to be sent to. This way they can collect their tax fees and then send the rest to the taxpayer. That way it guarantees that the tax prep company gets paid. But it's weird that this is much more of an issue this time around since they're going to the same accounts as the first stimulus check. So we can really only guess the reasoning there, if it was an excuse, if this is a legitimate reason. I guess it doesn't really matter as long as you receive that payment. Either way, the second issue could lead to more problems and more waiting for people though. The IRS put out a notice saying, quote, for those who don't receive a direct deposit, they should watch their mail for either a paper check or a prepaid debit card. Now, this is kind of weird because this doesn't mean if your check doesn't come today, you're at the mercy of an inbound paper check. It just seems their system hasn't totally caught up to the most recent changes. We have to remember last time we used the portal about 6 to 9 months ago for the first stimulus check, they didn't update the changes immediately on the portal. There could be a few days in between each update on your portal and delays before the most accurate information is there. So keep an eye on your bank account, whether or not the Get My Payment tool says expect a mailed check or not, and check in periodically to the Get My Payment tool because it could change. Now, I recently heard of a slightly different payment number 2 status update on that Get My Payment tool that you might find interesting as well. It says, on the title, it says payment number 2 status, then below it, it gives a scheduled mailing date. Now, this seems to be happening to some people regardless if their first check was mailed or not. So it's kind of odd. You might be one of those people who are just thinking, I'm just going to get a direct payment electronically because I received it the first time. That might not be the case, or it might still be the case, and their system just hasn't caught up. It could be either way. No matter what, you will get that payment. Worst case scenario on your taxes, but most likely before then. One thing we do know for sure is many more people will get the stimulus debit card this time around. I follow the IRS on Instagram. Yes, the IRS has an Instagram account. They only have like 60,000 followers, so go follow the IRS. And they said they'll be sending out 8 million debit cards this time around. That's more than 2.5 times as many cards than the first time around. The first time around, 3% of the people who received stimulus checks received it on that debit card. And the IRS has also said, keep a close eye on your mail so these letters don't get thrown away. That was a big issue the first time. They come in a pretty plain envelope. There might be a treasury seal on it. There might not. So keep an eye on that. They don't look legitimate. They kind of look like junk mail if you've seen the last one. Another thing we also know for sure is you can still receive 2 free stocks with Webull with the link in my description. All you need to do is deposit $100 into your account and you can be a part of this roller coaster stock market that we've seen right now. Everything is burning and on fire except for the stock market for whatever reason. So you can be a part of that totally free. Make a deposit. You don't even have to spend the $100 and you'll get 2 free stocks. I know a lot of you have done it. It's a pretty good deal. So while we wait for those checks to hit accounts, let's take a moment to check in on the COVID-19 vaccines and just how well they're faring. Georgia is one of the many states who are not happy with the rate that vaccines are being administered. 24.88% of vaccines in the state have been administered so far. So there's obviously a major logistical problem here where they have all these vaccines, but they're just not getting administered at the rate that they want them to. And of course, this just means more people getting the virus over time, spreading it to others, more concern, a slower recovery. Obviously, we want people who are going to get this vaccine to get the darn vaccine. Because of this slower than expected nationwide rollout of vaccines, Pfizer and others are looking to administer the vaccines through local pharmacies. So this is of course going to allow them to make this more accessible to people and get this out a little bit quicker. Many states have their own plans in place as well, with many of them preparing to move into the second phases, which includes a larger piece of the population able to get these vaccines. Right now, not everyone can get them, of course. But this will raise the rate at which vaccines are needed to be administered, though, upping that logistical problem. So we might just find ourselves in the same situation. Now that we're, let's just stay in Georgia and talk about those crazy runoff elections. After almost the entire state was swept Republican, 2 central counties, Baldwin and Washington, flipped and went Democrat, and that pretty much made the race. Now, please keep in mind these results are not officially sworn in, but they do seem to be headed in that direction, with both Democratic candidates, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, winning their respective races. This latest development will give the Democrats the majority in the Senate, removing Mitch McConnell as majority leader and making Chuck Schumer the majority leader. So staying as non-political here as possible, I try to stay right in the middle, even though I do get excited for people who are, receiving relief. It makes me happy to see if someone's in need and they get some relief, but let's stay non-political here. This is good news in terms for another round of COVID relief and of course, direct stimulus checks. We know that Democrat Chuck Schumer, who, as I said, is set to take over as majority leader, has spoken for the $2,000 checks and getting them onto the floor to be voted on very soon. On this, Bernie Sanders keeps bringing up the $2,000 checks and bringing the heat for these checks, telling Joe Biden that he must keep his promises. Here is a tweet from Sanders who said, "With Democrats in control of the Senate, we must keep faith with the working families of this country. Promises made must be kept. That means not only the $2,000 direct payment, but an aggressive agenda that recognizes the economic desperation facing so many Americans." So that's it for the meat of it today. Now let's do some quick current events. Apple has been touring car factories since 2014, and it appears they may have their sights on Hyundai. The South Korean company would team up with Apple in creating their first electric iCar. So far, this is all just speculation on the iCar, but the move to electric vehicles is a hot topic right now and might be a good move for Apple. I mean, cars are complicated. They're more complicated than phones for sure. So we'll see if this happens. GM is following the wave with a logo redesign in an attempt to appear more green and environmentally friendly. Here's the logo so you can check it out. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this thing? Finally, to wrap things up, there is an FDA-approved COVID-19 test that you can buy online through Amazon. The Dexterity COVID-19 Saliva at-Home Collection Kit received an emergency use authorization last month. For a low cost of $1,000, you can get a pack of 10 of these buggers, or you can get a single test for $110. So the test is able to give you results in between 24 to 72 hours. It's kind of aggressive pricing, but I suppose that's still cheaper than a rapid test in most areas, and you don't have to leave your house, so there's some convenience built in. Anyways, that's it for today, guys. I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and as always, have a profitable day.